So, Dr. Darnyelle, host of the Move to Millions podcast, thank you so much for joining me on Podcast Junkies.
I'm excited to be here. Like, first of all, just the name of the show, because I think I'm a podcast junkie, Harry. Like, I'm so excited for us to have this conversation today.
Well, what I think was interesting is a lot of times as podcasts, you get to host your own show and have great guests. And when you have someone that's had as much success as you start to have episode done, and then you don't really get to talk about your own story. And I think that was what fascinated me when I first started this show in 2014. I studied a little bit of acting and I was familiar with Inside the Actor Studio, that TV show with James Lipton. He would have actors on and take a kind of peek behind the screen, if you will. And this is almost like a peek behind the mic because as podcasters, we are all on similar journeys and we have this voice, obviously, that we have inside that needs to get out. And that's why we start podcasting. A lot of times it's like the duck with everything's calm on the surface, but underneath, like the feet are going a lot. So sometimes I like to talk about that stuff. So for the benefit of the listener and the viewer, where are you calling in from?
I am in Newcastle, Delaware.
Okay. Is that home? Is that you grew up there?
I did grow up here.
Yeah. What was that like? If someone was to come to you and be like, "Oh, tell me a little bit about Newcastle. What's it like growing up there? What is your fondest memory?"
It is slow, it is laid back. What I love about it the most is probably three things. Number one, I love that we have all four seasons. Number two, I love that we are equidistant from New York or DC, so I can get to either of those places relatively easily. And number three, I love that we don't pay sales tax.
That's a good one.
And of course, I didn't choose here. This is where my parents were. And of course, had opportunities to leave. I really like it. I get to travel a lot for work, but I do love being able to call Delaware home. I have homes in lots of places because I travel so much, but this is where I spend the majority of my time.
What was your childhood like?
Chaotic at best. My parents were drug addicts turned crack addicts. My mom went to jail when I was 8. My father took custody of us, which I'm so grateful for. And he was a fully functioning addict. So he never hit rock bottom. He would literally go to work on Friday and then we'd see him after work on Monday. And he'd be doing whatever he did, wherever he did it all weekend long. And we were left with my stepmother who really didn't want us there. I think we ruined her happily ever after when my mom went to jail because my dad was a part-time co-parent and then he became a full-time parent. I made a decision very early that I didn't want to be a product of where I came from. And so I turned to education and reading, which afforded me the opportunity to get a full academic scholarship and chart a different path than some of my brothers and sisters.
Where do you think that drive, that resilience, or that desire to have a need for a better life? Can you look back now and then see like maybe where that came from?
I get asked that question a lot. And I always remark at the fact that everyone says resilience because when I went to college, one of the benefits was that we got to see a mental health professional. And so I started seeing a therapist. And that was probably one of the very first things she said. First label she gave me was, wow, you're so resilient. I don't know where it came from, with the exception is that I do remember a very distinct moment. I was around 10 where I like proverbially looked left and looked right and said, I don't want either of those. I'm going to take the path right in front of me. I loved education. I loved my teachers. So there's got to be a way, right? And but that's it. Like I just knew that I didn't want to be teenage and pregnant. Like all of my little friends and even my younger sister got pregnant in her teens. I just didn't want that. I didn't want my own project. Like that was their whole life goal when we were in 7th grade. They were like, no, because I'm going to get my own project. By the time we were 16 and we were moving, they had 3 kids, Harry. Like, I mean, that's like where I grew up, like literally project adjacent. And I just wanted something different. I didn't want that. Like, I wanted to be rich, if I can be honest. Like, we were so broke. And even though my dad was technically middle class, he made really good money. He was an industrial engineer with GM. But of course, he smoked it. So he didn't really get to see it. But I just wanted to be rich. And I just knew a whole bunch of babies and welfare and getting my food stamps was not going to be the move if I wanted to be wealthy. So I just decided to seek out education. I had great teachers and guidance counselors in school who saw my potential, who honed it, who presented me with opportunities, who put my name in the hat for things that would come up so that I can experience culture and different things. I think that they looked at me and they just saw this little girl has the potential to do something really great. And I'm so grateful for that.
Do any come to mind? And you alluded to some of them, like the importance, we can't underestimate the importance of mentors in our
Oh,
life, people that are been transformational, that we're like, wow, thank you for that nudge or that push in that direction or reminding me like to take the better path. And so can you think of any that come to mind?
immediately. Mrs. Dixon, my fifth and sixth grade teacher, and Mr. Cook, my guidance counselor from ninth through 12th grade. Like every
Wow.
scholarship that came across his desk, he made sure I got it. He got all of my applications fees waived. Like if there was a program that was coming up for Black girls, like he was like, you need to be in this program. He was advocating for me in so many amazing ways. And I'm extremely grateful for both of them. And I had several other teachers along the way, but those two immediately stand out when I think about the defining moments that make me the woman that I am today.
They almost come across to me the way you described them, almost like your guardian angels. Does that-
They were amazing. Like I said, gratitude is the only thing that springs forth when I think about either of them and the opportunities that they afforded me. Yeah, and it really made a difference because we were alone a lot. Like I could have easily gotten into all kinds of mischief. Yeah.
So when you think about like the path that you're headed down, obviously you're on the right path. You've had these people who are like giving you guidance, giving you support. You're going to college. Did you know what you wanted to study? I don't know what role models you had up until that point about like people who've had successful careers or people you were looking up to. But what were your thoughts when you were in college, kind of getting ready to graduate? And I know you've gotten your master's as well. Like, what was, if you think back to that time, what was the vision for your life at that time?
Yeah, so from a very young age, like I'm gonna say seventh grade is probably when I really started to hone the speaks too much in class into something that mattered, right? I was her, I was chatty Kathy from day one, kindergarten, always in trouble because I was talking. And so I remember being in the seventh grade, and a teacher at that particular point in time said, you can defend anything. You should be an attorney. And for me, what that meant was I was going to make money. And then, of course, then we had the Cosby Show, and Claire Huxtable was an attorney, right? And so it was like, okay, I'm going to be an attorney. And so I studied English in undergrad because I had every intention to go to law school. I even got into several schools. I got into Georgetown, which was my number one school. And then I made the decision not to go because they did not offer me any scholarship money. And I was unwilling to take out student loans. And I'm grateful for that, Harry, because I know today that I could have just loaned it out and maybe they would have even been forgiven by now. Who knows? But I just was like, no, I'm not going to go. And so I took a job in corporate America instead and ended up getting my MBA that the company paid for because I went to undergraduate for free. And so I just had this belief that was like, you shouldn't pay for your education. So I was like, I'm not paying for my education, but my initial intent was to be an attorney. I am grateful now. I mean, I don't know if I would have ended on the same path. I still talk for a living. I get paid a lot of money to open and run my mouth, which is I got in trouble for as a child. I don't know if I had have gone to law school, how different my life would be. And I never like think about it. Like I never vision cast or think back or wonder. I believe the path that I took was the one I was supposed to be on.
Yeah, clearly. So you make your way into the corporate world, and I think it seems like you had like a couple of various positions, management level officer positions at MBNA. Is it Bank of America as well?
Well, MBNA became Bank of America. So
Yeah.
yeah, when I was leaving, Bank of America was buying MBNA.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably a lot of experiences you had there. I was in corporate for 20 plus years. I worked at JP Morgan Chase, I worked at E-Trade. So definitely very familiar with the corporate grind. And obviously a lot of that, I imagine, started to prepare you for your next step. But if you had to look back at your time in the 9 to 5 world, what are some of the kind of key takeaways or some of the insights that you think were instrumental for you in terms of, developing who you are now?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. No one's ever asked me that. And I have done a lot of podcasts. So, three things immediately stand out to me. Number one, do your work. Like, I was not at MBNA to socialize. I did not have power hours at the water cooler. Like, I was working. So, and I used to get a lot of flack from it because I started as a 217 entry level representative. I applied for a job to go to credit acquisition. I got the job. That made me a 219. A year into that position, I had a meeting with a senior executive vice president, Mike Keyports. I will never forget him. He was my guardian angel at MBNA. And because of that, I became a manager.
Yep.
And then I became a personal banking officer, then a senior personal banking officer, assistant vice president, all in 3 years. I did my work and I studied, like I learned what I needed to know about business and financial services. We're a credit card company primarily. They had mortgage and insurance as well, but I was on the credit card side and I head down did the work. I didn't work 16-hour days. I didn't put in FaceTime like any of the people. I just did a great job
Yeah.
doing what I was called to do, what I was supposed to do. So that's number one. Number two, and other people's experience in corporate will definitely be different than mine unless they are also a Black woman. But because I got promoted so frequently, I had a lot of flack. And so, I mean, I used to hear all of the, oh, she must be sleeping with someone, like
Mm,
all of that stuff, right?
yeah.
And to that, I would say, know your value, know what you bring to the table, and don't get caught up by the naysayers, because that was really, really important. And then the last thing, and this served me when I left, like the relationships don't die when you leave the building, right? So maintained relationships in some of my early work when I came out, because the first iteration of my company, I was a motivational speaker. A lot of that work came from Bank of America. Like I could
Yeah.
call the people that were my colleagues and say, "Hey, you need someone to come in and talk to the women," or those types of things, and got some opportunities to come in and to do some early speaking and consulting, which made a difference too.
I think I had someone similar in my career trajectory. I started out as a teller at the window, like a part-time teller in the
Mhm.
bank, and then eventually made it to full time. And then they moved me to the floor and then opened up accounts.
Yeah,
And just so that path is really resonating with me because I just kind of followed, I had what I call my corporate godfather. Like I think I ended up working for him in like 3 or 4 different departments and
me too. Yep.
eventually at another company as well because he would just always look out for me and I'll never forget.
That was Mike.
Yeah.
Everywhere he went, he'd come sending for me. He'd be like, "I got a role for you," and I'd be like, "Okay, great."
Yeah, that's good. So it sounds like it's very important developmental time for you. But as obviously, since we're having this conversation, there had to be something inside of you that was thinking about something more, something entrepreneurial. And then for myself, I would always leave and come back like .com craze. I left. I wanted to try something. I came back, didn't work. But
Yeah.
there was always something there, and that's where I am now. And so I'm wondering for you, when did that start for you? Like the kind of flickers of just like, I think there might be something more that I want to do that's not the 9 to 5.
Yeah. So it's a really great story. So I was engaged to be married, and 3 months before my wedding, we called it off because my ex-fiance announced that he had gotten someone else pregnant.
Whoa.
So we called it off.
Whoa.
And my friends let me mope for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months, and then eventually they were like, "Enough of this. We've got to move on," right? And so they took me to a Mary Kay skincare class. And so I tried the product. I loved the product. I bought the product. I ended up becoming a consultant to sell the product. And so slowly but surely, as I got indoctrinated into the Mary Kay world and started attending their events and seminars and different things like that, started to get this glimpse of personal development. And not that we weren't developed at MBNA. I mean, their training was top notch, but of course it was how to do your job better, right? How to exist in our microcosm. It wasn't how to be a better human.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to get this content, this information that makes me want to be a better human, that makes me dream and think about the possibility of life beyond the 9 to 5. And I eventually, in 2004, I just woke up one day. I call it my Keith Sweat moment. If you're familiar,
Oh,
Keith
yeah.
Sweat is an R&B singer, right? So he has the song "Something Just Ain't Right."
Yeah.
So I call it my key sweat moment. I literally woke up December the 17th, 2004, and I was just like, something's not right. And, I proceeded to get dressed and go to work. And by the time I was driving to work, I had a knot in the pit of my stomach. By the time I got in the building and hit the button on the elevator, was a lump in my throat. And by the time I got to my desk, it was clear that was my last day. And I literally drafted the quickest letter of resignation and took it into my boss and quit with no plan.
Wow.
No plan. So I was like, well, while I figure it out, I'll just sell Mary Kay full time. And 2 pink Cadillacs later, I had what I call my Britney Spears moment. Oops, I did it again, right?
Yeah.
I traded one desk for another because I was
Oh,
starting to realize that I was not meant to sit behind someone else's desk.
yeah.
And so I sent my second pink Cadillac back to the company and we started the first iteration of what is today Incredible One Enterprises. And we struggled. We failed miserably. I
Yeah.
mean, I burned through all of my cash and ended up having to file bankruptcy and all of that, and went back to work for 2 years
Oh,
and
wow.
worked my business part time on the
Okay.
side. And then eventually I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And so I was like, I got to get myself together. And I quit that job and came back to full time in my business. We got to six figures, we got to 500,000, then we got to seven figures,
Nice.
and we haven't looked back. And here we are 14 years later.
Amazing. So many key nuggets there that I just want to kind of go back to. So when you're in
Yeah.
Mary Kay, like a lot of people see Mary Kay from the exterior and they know about the pink Cadillacs and I don't know if they associate it with like an MLM, like sort of marketing scheme or
It's considered, they say direct sales.
yeah,
I mean, there are multi levels in it, but the difference between a traditional MLM and a direct sales company is that you are earning twice. So it's not like you only earn it as your levels go up. You earn on the product, and then you can also earn commission as you build a team.
but what I think is fascinating is obviously you succeeded in that environment. And so I'm just kind of tracking now your trajectory here. Now, if you look back at Mary Kay, what was it about you and everything you had been learning up to that point and what was driving you that allowed you to succeed in that organization? Because I'm sure a lot of women and men sure
A lot
join.
try,
Yeah.
and very few get the pink Cadillac for sure. They had a proven business model. Like, I followed the direction. I
Yeah.
say this to my coaching and consulting clients all the time. Do what I tell you to do. It works. It's proven. I've already vetted it,
Yeah.
right? I literally followed the system. The system was go out every day, warm chatter 5 women. Go home, call the 5 women. 3 of the women will book an appointment with you. Book a facial, turn it into a skincare class. Get her to invite 3 of her girlfriends. Get her to invite 3 of her girlfriends. Go do the appointment, sell them the product, book the follow up session to do color. I'd go back and do color. I'd present them with a business opportunity. I
Jeez.
literally did everything they said to do, and it works.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people do you know that are entrepreneurs that think they figured it out their own way, or
Mm.
I'm not going to do that because, and so they elongate how long it takes them to get to where it is that they want to be. Like, I literally followed the system. It was easy,
Yeah.
and it prepared me for real entrepreneurship. I mean, no disrespect to Mary Kay, but it's not really real
No.
entrepreneurship, right? Because somebody else is calling the shots and determining
Yeah.
how much you make and all of that. And yes, you can have unlimited growth potential within the confines of what they are allowing to be possible for you. And I did great. I mean, multiple six figures. I became number one in my national area, top in my state, young Black woman driving a pink car, like all the things. We did
Yeah.
it. And it was amazing. And I'm so grateful because I know that I would not be an entrepreneur
Yeah.
running a multiple seven-figure business today had it not been for Mary Kay, because Mary Kay thickens your skin.
Yeah. I'm sure.
You
I
get lots of no's.
now I can't get Keith Sweat out of my head. So my favorite song is "I Want Her." So because I grew up
Oh,
DJing, so
yeah.
I think I have it on vinyl too. So it's like take me back. I'm wondering if you ever had the opportunity in that pink Cadillac to play some Aretha Franklin while you were
Oh,
driving
of
around.
course. I mean, you have to. Like, and anytime you go to any event, of course, they're jamming Aretha, and they would also play the Natalie Cole version of Pink
Okay.
Cadillac too, but
Okay.
Aretha definitely
Yeah.
the majority of the time.
So Incredible One, you're at Mary Kay. What's the story behind whatever's driving you to take this now to the next level?
Yeah, so I had that Britney Spears moment. I
Yeah.
literally just one day in October of 2007 was like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Like,
Mhm.
where is the life-changing work in selling lipstick? It just dawned on me all of a sudden, like, I'm working really hard
Yeah.
for a brand that is determining how much money I make. And so the moment that was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, was I was finishing up that second pink Cadillac and we needed to do $60,000 in wholesale production in 1 month.
Wow.
And we did it.
Yeah.
And if I had a sold, and that 60,000 wholesale was 120,000 retail. If I'd have sold $120,000 in my own business, I would have had 120,000.
Yeah.
When I got my commission check from the company that month, my check was like $16,000.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
I mean, somebody is like, Darnyelle, why are you tripping? That's $16,000. Yeah, but I did $120,000 worth of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to put this much effort in, if I'm going to put this much energy in, I should get all the money. And so I was like, I got to figure out what I'm supposed to do. And I'm a God girl. So I literally went to bed that night and I prayed and I was like, Lord, will you please show me what it is that you have for me?
Mm.
And that night, I had a dream of myself walking into a building that had a marquee that read Incredible One Enterprises. So when I woke up the next morning, I grabbed my journal. I like to active journal. And what I mean by that is I write the question and then I wait until the answer comes into my spirit and then I write it down.
Love that.
And so I said, what is Incredible One Enterprises? And I sat and I wait. It felt like ever. And then eventually, what I heard was doing your purpose work. When I was 10, thanks to Miss Dixon, she gave me my first journal and she changed my life because I was an angry little Black girl because my mom went to jail during my 8th birthday party. And my
Wow.
stepmom didn't want me. And my
Wow.
dad was never around and I was angry. And Miss Dixon gave me a journal and she said, every time you get upset, I want you to write about it. And within 2 weeks, I found my love affair with words. And I declared that I was going to use words to change the lives of other people. At 10, I didn't know what it meant for real, but that's what I knew. And so when I had that moment and it came back to me, I said, I'm supposed to be using words to change people's lives. And I had a lot of success using my words in Mary Kay. That's why I was a top sales director. I could recruit and close women into the business opportunity. I just shifted it and I started speaking. I wrote my very first book and I went on the road speaking for books, like buy copies of books for your audience, and I will come and I
Yeah.
will speak. And something was ignited in me, and that it was great. But what I realized very quickly is that speaking and one off speaking engagements does not a business make. So I was like, okay, we got to do something else. But before I could figure out what that something else was, I ran out of money. I filed bankruptcy. I went back to work. And when I went back to work, I fully committed to learn what I could do beyond motivational speaking. So that's how I was really introduced to the personal development industry and coaching through the lens of me being a service provider, not being a customer. And so I got a coaching certification. And that was even a gift from another guardian angel who, when I worked and ran a women's business center for 2 years. That was the job I went back, which was a godsend because I learned all the things I didn't know about a ground up business. And I made a really, really great friend and mentor who took me under his wing. And he was running a program for the state of Delaware. And he sent me through a certification program to become a business coach and consultant
Okay.
to help him serve businesses in the state of Delaware, but also to help me gain the things I didn't know that I would eventually be able to use in my own business. And I just, once we switched over into being able to offer coaching and finally got my bearings on how to price and all of those things, I helped people get tremendous success and just said, let's do more of this. Let's
Mm.
serve more people. And that's how we got to where we are today.
Fantastically inspiring. You're truly a force of nature.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
talk about now. Obviously, we're in the world of entrepreneurship and people getting started. You know, like I mentioned earlier, I've had my own business since 2015. And one of the things you do learn about early on is to be comfortable with failure and this idea of like not wallowing in like, oh, woe is me. And you just have to get up faster. You got get that dirt off your
Yeah,
shoulders as
absolutely.
fast as possible. And you got to fail. You know, I've heard it described as fail forward and just,
Mhm.
realize that's just one thing more that that doesn't work. So you can move on to the things
Yeah.
that do work.
Failure's feedback.
Yeah. So in your entrepreneurial journey, getting to where you are today, can you think back at what have been some of the the peaks and valleys that made you more resilient, coming back to that word resilient, that have strengthened you and making you feel more confident in what you're doing and the work you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, there have been many peaks and valleys, and each time I definitely learn, right? I think the worst thing that any entrepreneur can do in today's marketplace is be still attempting to leverage the strategies of yesterday's
Mm,
marketplace. The marketplace is changing rapidly,
yeah.
right? And now
Yeah.
we've got AI, which is a whole nother beast, right? But the pre-COVID marketplace is where we're recalibrating back to. And
Okay.
and it's got people disjointed because COVID was really you could just say hello and make money.
Yeah.
And it's because the things that people were selling it in the coaching and consulting industry, they were playing on, and not purposely. I don't think well, I do think that there were some charlatans out there, but they were playing on the mental health crisis that was happening globally around the world. And the way that people chose to resolve the mental health crisis that they were experiencing, being trapped in their home for months on end without human contact beyond their children, was to spend money, to put retail therapy on it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
where they're buying tons of courses on everything and they're joining coaching programs and they're paying in full and they're emptying out their 401ks to buy these programs. And a lot of people got fat
Yeah.
during COVID. Well, now we're far from COVID, right? And so now the marketplace is recalibrating to you've got to demonstrate you've got expertise and you can really solve problems to get my money.
Yeah.
The buyer hasn't become more skeptical. They're going back because they're now out of the mental health crisis because they're now back into congruency and alignment and connection with people. We all have that basic need. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs of connection and belonging, and we have that back now.
Yeah.
So we're not coming up off the coin as quickly and hazardly
Haphazardly.
as we were for mediocre solutions
Yeah.
a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, the marketplace is recalibrating. Now, those of us who've always operated in integrity and excellence and have proven results aren't really feeling the brunt of it because we understand business. But those of us who have struggled and bit the wave are probably rearing right now. And they're part of that 10% that goes out of business every year.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I can think about the stages of our business. We talked a lot about the first iteration before I was a quote unquote success. And since then, so 2011 is when I came back into the business full time.
Okay.
So we're 13 years from there. Since then, we've had a pretty steady upward trajectory. We're an Inc. 5000 company, 533% growth. We've done it 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
I actually didn't submit this year. I could have, but I chose not to because I've already got the credential at this
Sure.
point.
Sure.
And once you understand it's really a money grab for Inc. And I'm
I'm
not
sure.
mad at Inc. for the amount of money that they make. They get buku dollars from everyone is
Just
so excited to
do the
buy
math
all
on
of the
that. Yeah.
branded stuff because they've gotten this award,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I just made a strategic decision that, it's not something that I need. It's not a notch on my belt that's going to give me any validation. So I chose not to submit, although I could have because our company grew again by over 500% over the last 3 years. Anyway, and even with that, there's still peaks and valleys. Like we have programming that we implement that we realize it's not the best fit for the client we want to serve. And so we have to scrap that program and start from scratch, right?
Yeah.
I decide I want to do something different and just not quite blow up my business, but shift trajectory. And then we've got to get legs behind it because we've got to get traction in the marketing. Because yes, I have a standing in the industry and in the marketplace. But as soon as you decide to do something different, if people don't know about it and you're not talking about it
Yeah.
consistently,
Yeah.
then they can't partake, right? And so, we've had moments like that. We've had team members that started out really great and turned into nightmares. And we have opportunities to continue to grow the team and we're looking for the right people. So we experience the ebbs and flows of having a company and operating in the marketplace today. And every single time, like one of the things that we have become really, really good at doing as a team is we stay performing a SWOT analysis, right? Whether it's on a program, it's on the entire business, it's on a quarter. We're looking at what are the strengths that came out of this? What were the weaknesses we identified? What are our opportunities and what are our threats? And how do we take this data that we've just compiled and turn it into something that we can leverage in order to better impact the world, increase our income, and increase our influence in the marketplace? And it's a continual dance, and it's one that I enjoy. I'm grateful to be able to do. But yeah, entrepreneurship is not without challenge. If it wasn't, everybody be doing it,
Yeah.
right? And that would be great because some of us need employees who don't want to be entrepreneurs that want to work on our behalf and
Yeah.
help us to do the work that we're called to do in the world. So yeah,
How big's the team now?
I have 7
Okay.
full-time team members. Yeah.
What's that been journey like? Because that's one of the transition points as an entrepreneur. You start to get you're a solopreneur, and then you get freelancers working for you, and then there's always that bump. And I've had a couple of experiences with it where you have to find someone who is committed to your vision as you are, without being the head person. They don't maybe aspire to be that head person. They just want to be in support role. But
Yeah.
translating your passion for how you want things done, how meticulous you are to detail, you have that in your head as an entrepreneur, that you can do all these things that before you realize that you can't. And then you
Yes.
hope that as you assign these projects or assign these responsibilities, they'll do them to the level that you want them done. And in the beginning, it's probably not, because there's no one you can't replicate yourself. So I'm curious what that journey's been like for you. building a team that's like, that you can count on.
Yeah, it's a lot of work around leadership, right? Becoming someone worth following. That's my definition of a leader. And so the clarity of vision, the clarity of task, like we have an amazing operations management system in our organization. Every task is documented in a standard operating procedure with a process flow of video and audio and the written word. Like,
Uh,
so regardless of how the team member likes to consume,
Yeah,
and get to that point of immersion, we've got that covered,
that's
right?
great.
We've got an amazing hiring process. Now, I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about when we started. It was whack. It was a lot of trial and error. It was, okay, I don't know what just happened there, but
Yeah,
we got to try again, right? And you build over time. Like you said it a few minutes ago, and I reiterated failure is feedback, right?
yeah,
Like when you hire a person and they don't work out, you don't put your head in the sand and act like someone stole your bike. Instead, you evaluate, well, what didn't I do well? Let me look at that job description again. I missed this because this thing that I missed is the reason why I got that person. So let me get really clear about who I need to take this role. And you have to be willing to pay them
yeah,
to come through the door. Like, and I have a team member who is international, which is great because we get a quality team member at an investment that works for us and is a lot of money for them because of the exchange. But you can't pay your people subservient dollars and expect brilliant work. Like, it just doesn't work that way, and none of us will wanna be paid that way,
of
right?
course. Yeah,
And so that's leadership comes in and recognizing and making sure that your prices are set up to support you to be able to charge at a level, to be able to pay people
sure.
well, to be a part of helping you to grow what it is that you do. And it's been a lot of trial and error, and I still don't have it perfect,
Yeah,
but I have an amazing team that believes in what we do and is here to be a part of it, and that makes a difference. I can teach you how to do almost anything, but the one thing I can't teach is I can't teach your intention and the way that you feel about the work that we do. You have to come to the table with that attitude and that mindset and that desire to serve at the highest of levels, and then I can teach you how to create a funnel if that's what I need you to do,
yeah,
right? And so we focus primarily on mindset and the way that they believe and what they do. And we also do a lot of development
yeah.
for our team too to help them to continue to grow as individuals and not just for the contribution they make to the company, but their contribution to the world. And so that they are able to support their families and
Hmm.
even potentially pursue their own interests, right?
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
some people who have side businesses that we're completely okay with
yeah.
that honor and complement what it is that we do, right? And we've had team members who decided to transition because they got the bug and they wanted to go off and do it on their own. And we're excited for that too. Like we get really grateful for whatever amount of time we have to spend with the people that are really great. And because we have tremendous systems, if we need to bring someone else in, we can go through the hiring process and bring a great person in who will be able to pick up right where they left off.
That's great. One of the suggestions I heard once for people building teams is to have your new team members write a resignation letter. So they write a resignation letter as if they're resigning. And what that exercise does, it kind of highlights what's in their mind of things that would possibly cause them to leave. So obviously they're happy in the
Mm,
moment, but if you have them write the letter, like a future letter, like write your future resignation letter the moment when you decide you're
yeah.
going to leave this company. And
Wow.
it's a pretty interesting exercise. I haven't been able
And
to,
it's an interesting exercise.
haven't been able to
Yeah.
do it yet, but I imagine you'll get some interesting insights about like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm leaving because I just
What do you
realized it.
need to do?
Yeah.
Especially if you haven't yet established culture,
Yeah.
you are a strong leader and don't have the right leadership systems in place to be able to support them. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that that could be really, really powerful.
You talk a lot about vision and transformation. I see you've got the word believe behind you as well. I'm
Mhm.
curious because I'm a spiritual person myself, like how that aspect of your life has driven like a lot of the decisions you make in the day to day.
Yeah, it's a big part of it, right? Like I said a few minutes ago, I'm an unapologetic God girl. I do
Yeah.
not apologize about my faith. I don't usurp my faith onto anyone, but I stand boldly in it and I'm not going to shrink back because you might feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? And so I also believe, and I think that this happens a lot. And when I talk about my relationship with God, I'm literally talking about a relationship. It's not religiously filtered.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is just that I'm not into the rituals and the rites and the sanctions. I'm really about connection and alignment. and really seeing myself the way that I believe God saw me before I was formed in my mother's womb. And so in everything that I do, I am seeking to make sure that my relationship with the creator, he's getting glory from any act of service that I might perform. So that's really important to me. And at the same time, and I see this a lot amongst Christians because I grew up Christian. And I always say today, I subscribe to the doctrines of Christianity. I
Okay.
do believe and love Jesus.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I hear a lot is I'm waiting on God. Well, I believe God is waiting on you.
Yeah.
And so the Bible in James says faith without works is dead. I say all the time we have to give God something to bless. So while I am in constant relationship and communication with God through prayer, through visualization, through meditation, I am not waiting on God. I'm taking the next action because I also know that I was created in his image and likeness, which makes me a God of the earth and I have power and authority over everything. So because I know that and I operate in that confidence, we can co lead and exist, right? This company, we're both the CEO of. I'm the steward. I'm daily working in it, but he is absolutely an advisor that I consult, and I know that when I can consult him, the answer ruminates in my spirit of what's the
Yeah.
next best step that I should take. And so that's the way that I move and I operate. And through the work that we do with our clients, we introduce spiritual principles. We talk about those things that are really religiously agnostic that make a difference in how you show up in your life experience and how you connect to God that will help you to elevate and accelerate the amount of abundance that gets to come into your life experience. And it's been a really amazing dynamic to watch our clients deepen their connection to God while they grow their business and make more money. Because again, talking about Christians and Christianity, I think the Bible is a book. And, I use the acronym that a lot of people say basic instructions before leaving earth, right? I believe that it is a book that is used religiously, but I don't think it's a religious book because I think it's just innate in us to connect with our creator. And even here in the United States, our money says, "In God we trust." And our politicians end every speech with "and God bless America."
Yeah.
So having a relationship with God is the fabric of who we are. And so even when I think about the fact that we're helping our clients deepen that connection to God while growing their financial ability and their financial legacy, it's almost oxymoronic, right? Because there's so many believers who think that you can't have money because Christianity is rooted in Catholicism, and
Sure.
Catholicism says the poorer you are, the closer you are to God, which is actually contrary to what God desires for you. Probably could take us on a whole nother tangent or produce a whole nother podcast episode, but it is an important part of who I am.
Yeah.
And I think just like, you bring your personality to everything that you do, you bring your spirituality to everything that you do. And I would never leave it on the shelf or leave it in the car. If I
No.
was going into a meeting, I would take it with me.
No, it seems like I got the sense just from how we started the conversation and the comments that you've made that it's an integral part of who you
Yeah.
are, and it's been an important part of your journey since early.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
reading a book now called Love Money, Money Loves You, and it's been channeled by money's having speaking to you in the book like as if it's the entity, and it's like, hey, we're abundant, we're here, we want to like give you as much of it as possible. You need to
I
be
love
open.
that book.
It's an
I love it.
amazing book. Yeah.
It is, like, the book that changed my life was A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Cameron Jacondi. I
Okay.
love that book, it changed my life, and I love reading books
Yeah.
on money because we have to normalize it, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people, based on how they were raised, that are still afraid to talk about money, and it doesn't matter, Harry, whether you were born into money or you were born broke. Everybody thinks
Sure.
money is taboo and it's rude to talk about money. And that's why, as a country, we struggle so much with financial literacy. I mean, 63% of adults live paycheck to paycheck. 92% of employees say financial stress affects their job because we don't talk about it enough. We haven't normalized it and made it okay. We want to make people feel bad if they want to talk about money. And anyway, again, I could go off on a whole nother tangent, but
Well, this leads us into incredible one. So talk a little bit about the work you do and the people that you work with and how you help entrepreneurs make that leap and make that transition into a
yeah.
better version of themselves.
So our clients are six-figure service-based entrepreneurs who know and desire to be million-dollar CEOs. And they want to do it without having to hustle and grind. And so We work with them. We have two core frameworks that we utilize in our programs and our methodology. The Move to Millions method, which is a seven pillar system that allows us to evaluate the effectiveness of a business and make sure that they have all of the assets they need to produce seven figures easily inside of their business. Not without work, there's work to be done, but
Yeah.
to do it in a way that's congruent with who they are. Those seven pillars are strategy, sales, systems, support, success mindset, spirituality, and self care.
Okay.
And then our second primary framework are it's the pillars of business optimization. And so we're looking specifically at the systems and infrastructure that's set up behind each of these seven pillars. And those seven pillars are mindset, messaging, marketing, sales, operations, talent, and leadership. And so we're paying attention to everything that is being set up to help them to create the systems and infrastructure that will support them as they build out the team so that they can ultimately spend 20% or less of their time in the business, able to strategically preside, spending 80% of their time or more on the business. And so it's a really great program and curriculum that helps them to understand what it's going to take to have an enterprise that does multiple millions of dollars a year.
Out of those programs and those frameworks and or like the pillars of the systems, where do you see that new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that come to start work with you, where do you see them most get stuck?
Yeah, so there's probably 3 places that they get stuck. Success mindset, it's
Mm.
always it's almost always a mindset problem, right?
Yeah.
So success mindset, and that could be in the form of how do they price their services? They could still be thinking like an employee and charging by the hour. Well, you're gonna run out of hours, and what are you gonna do then, right? So that's one. And then the second is identifying and nailing down the right strategy. And we define strategy. There's, I think, 7 P's. I like seven. So I think there's 7 P's. The person, like, so who's the person you're supposed to serve? What's the problem they have? What's the promise you're making them through your solution? How do you package it? How do you price it? How do you position it? How do you promote it? And how do you experience profitability because of it? So they really struggle in that strategy space. And so we, beyond the success mindset, we're really working on strategy. And once we help them with their strategy, then we teach them how to sell in a leveraged environment so they can stop selling one on one and they can start selling multiple people at the same time. And that, of course, will accelerate their revenue. Yeah.
And where do you see, what are the qualities of someone who has success with your program?
That's a great question. So our clients are they are brilliant. Like, they are amazing at what they do. No one does it better than them. They do work that is impactful for them as the person doing the work and the clients that they serve. They are experts in their field and they're fully committed to family and legacy. Like, those are things that are important. Part of the reason why they became entrepreneurs, although it may have been out of necessity because they got laid off and then just never went back to work, but part of that is because they want to shift the trajectory. They want something different to happen for future generations and to leave their children better than they may have been left themselves. They are committed to being in community and connecting with people deeply and being educated. They want a quality business education that is going to honor their core values and position them to achieve next level success.
Nice. What does it feel like when one of your clients or students has success in your program and you can see the trajectory of like where they were when they started with you and then they graduate or whatever it is that, in terms of getting to the next level or hitting that first mailing, like what is that feeling like for you?
It is all inspiring. It is amazing. Like, I have so many clients, just as you asked that just started to pop into my head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just remember when I first started working with them. Like, it's just amazing to know that I am a catalyst. Like, I cannot take all the credit. I will not take the credit because they are, of course, doing the work, but participating in the journey, helping them to align the business and identify the right strategies that are going to work. There is nothing more fulfilling. Like, I love that I get paid to do work that really feeds my soul. It's so rewarding. It really, really is. I do pinch myself from time to time, like, I cannot believe I make all of this money to do what I do. Like,
Yeah,
it's work that I would do for free, but I know I don't have to because I solve an amazing problem for
yeah,
people. But I love it so much that I would do it for free. And I have an amazing ability to over deliver. Like, I over deliver not because I don't think I think I have to justify the investment. No, I over deliver because I love what I do.
sure.
And I love watching the lights come on and people's lives literally change right in front of me.
That's amazing. Very inspiring. So we're 45 minutes into a show about podcasts. We haven't talked about yours yet. So we should probably do that. So Move to
Yeah.
Millions. What's the origin story there? Like what was happening in your world? Were you listening to podcasts or what drove that?
I wasn't listening to podcasts, but podcasts. So I originally started the show in 2018. It wasn't called Move to Millions at first, but I had been doing like my way of putting content out into the world was every week for like 7 years. I answered a question and recorded a video. And then I was like, okay, this takes a lot. I got to bring a person in to record the video. Then they got to edit the video. Like, there's got to be another way. And, at that time, a colleague was like, oh, well, you should podcast. You have such great things to say. You're a speaker and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, I'll start a podcast. So I started the podcast in 2018. It was called the Leverage Your Incredible Factor podcast. My company is Incredible One Enterprises. And I did 100 episodes and did not break 25,000 downloads.
Yeah.
So nobody was listening to my show basically, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, this is crazy." Simultaneously, I get an amazing download from God and he's like, "Move to millions." And I felt it in my bones. I felt it. And I was like, I had been praying for my movement. And I was like, this is it. And so we went through a rebrand or refresh. And as a result of that, the podcast name got changed to Move to Millions. Now, here's the cool thing, Harry. I literally changed the name of the podcast. So we did 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
We did not record new shows in 2020. And then 2021, we came back with the show. Like we had gone through the rebrand and then we came back. And when we came back, within the first month of the show being called Move to Millions, we had 50,000 downloads.
Wow. That's amazing.
We ended up crossing 1,000,000 downloads, and it felt like it happened so fast, and I was like the content was basically the same content. It was literally just the name change.
Yeah, of course. Wow. That's interesting.
It's just what's in a name? Like, the name matters, right? It was amazing, and yeah, I love it. It's my outlet. It's my free content to the world. I love to do it. We do 2 episodes a week.
Oh,
So
wow.
I do a full-length episode on Mondays, sometimes solo insights, sometimes guests, and then on Wednesday, I do the Move to Millions Minute. So I do like a 10-minute or so episode where I give them an affirmation to finish their week, moving one step closer to the $1,000,000 mark, and then I, like, pontificate on the affirmation for a few minutes, and I love it, and very soon we're gonna go to 3 episodes a week, and I'm gonna do a solo episode each week and a guest interview each week, or I'm gonna do, like, a prayer of the week, like, I'm gonna do an episode on Friday, and it's gonna be something different maybe each week, or maybe it'll always be a guest interview, and I always do a solo on Monday because I love it, and I just want more content out in the world, and so I love my show.
So, how has the format of the podcast changed or the content? Has it always been like, you've talked about this mix. And so I'm curious, like, as it's changed over the years, like how you've grown as a host since starting the show.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And the flow of the show has changed over time. We've added in some new elements and the content has just gotten deeper. Like I think when I first started, I was kind of just getting my bearings. And so I was like, okay, let me get in the habit of talking to people this way and talking to people for, 20 or 30 minutes. And then eventually I just really started to like brain dump, like, what do I want to say? And so some episodes are about my frameworks and methodologies and like real business content, and other episodes are on mindset, and then other episodes are spiritually focused. Like I really, as I think through what I'm going to talk about, like a month at a time, I'm like, okay, this month I'm going to focus on this, and everything I'm going to say is about this. And we started integrating our pillars from the core frameworks in. So I'm making sure if I'm doing an episode once every 7 episodes, I'm talking about something related to strategy and so forth and so on, so that I'm really giving some well-rounded content for people. And that has been really, really helpful. Like we're in 133 countries around the world right now, which is pretty phenomenal. And I know it's been because I've really started to take it seriously, right? Like when I saw that just changing the name elevated how many people were listening,
Yeah.
it was like the first 2 years I was just practicing. And then it's like, no, people are actually listening to what it
Yeah.
is that I have to say.
Yeah.
Let me think about what I want to say a little bit more strategically, right? Like, let me sit down and prepare at least a loose outline, right? I don't necessarily frame it all out because I don't want it to be contrived. I just really want to allow the spirit to flow through me. But it's been really amazing what has come out of the episodes just by being tuned in to wanting to be more intentional about what I share.
I love the fact that you're making a concerted effort to recognize that there's like that third person. Because I always say in a podcast conversation, there's the host, there's the guest, and then there's the listener. And I always
Mhm.
say it's singular because it's one person listening at a time. And they usually have like the earbuds on and they're going for a walk or they're walking their dog or they're making dinner. And you're building this like intimate relationship with them. Even the microphone, like if I place the microphone away from me right now, you can tell the difference as opposed to something that's here
Right.
because you're creating that sort of like kind of theater of their mind and you're bringing them into your world. And it's, I always wanted to feel like we're like in a restaurant or a bar and that someone has pulled up a third stool and just listening to us have this
Right.
conversation. And
Yep.
so always
I
conscious
agree.
of that experience and building that relationship with the listeners and not taking them for granted either. Just that there's some, without them, you don't have an audience. And I think it's so
Right.
important that you keep saying that. And have you seen yourself develop in terms of your ability to have these like longer form conversations and to be like more curious and just asking these like open-ended questions?
Yeah, when I do an interview now one thing I don't do is I don't research the guests in advance. I let it be completely organic.
Yeah,
I
same.
mean, we have them fill out a form, so we have a little bit of basic information on them, so I get the first few questions I'm gonna ask,
Yeah,
and then just based on what they say, that determines where we go in and how
yeah.
we move, and that has been really powerful because it requires me to be fully present. I can't
Yes.
multitask, I can't like, I used to try to take notes when I was in the I'm like, "Now, no, I'm gonna have to listen back to get my notes for the show notes." Of course, now I don't have to do that because we got all this AI I can plug in and it'll give it to me, but I literally am just fully present to the conversation and I'm listening to what they're saying and as I'm listening to what they're saying, I'm thinking about who's listening. And I'm like, you know what? There's someone listening right now that they just heard you say that and they're dumbstruck. Like, I need you to double click on that. I need you to talk about that a little bit more. Or how could you say that differently? Because I get the impression that someone's going to listen and it's going to confuse them. Like, really being present and thinking about them at the same time as I do. And that has really made a difference too.
I love that. So just always reminding yourself that there's someone else that's listening that may not understand it, the issue as clearly as you do. And, just kind of holding their hand along the way is something I talk about a lot. So I love the fact that you're saying that.
Absolutely. And even just repeating, like, "Okay, let me just this is what I just heard. I wanna make sure you guys caught it." Like that debriefing and downloading, like, just to make sure that they get it is something that I think is really important. I've become a really great interviewer, like, and people literally say that, like, "You are an amazing interviewer." Like, those questions that you ask, which is why I don't wanna prepare, because if I go and prepare, then the conversation is not gonna be what is authentically needs to be said at that particular point in time. Like, there's a reason the 2 of us are together, and what we're to put out in the world together is unique, and you can't prepare for that. You just have to be open and have the capacity and space to welcome in whatever needs to come out through you and the guests at that particular point in time.
Amen. That's all I can say to
Yeah,
that. Okay. So I could definitely feel like we could talk for another hour. So I want to respect your time and try to bring this into the home stretch. I've had a wonderful time chatting with
this
you.
has been
Just
amazing.
such good energy. And I love connecting with other human beings at this level to talk about whatever's on my mind, whether it's business or spirituality. So I love this forum. So a couple of questions as we wrap up. What is the most misunderstood thing about you?
Oh, I love this question. I think the most misunderstood thing about me is that I am cold and distant, and here's why. When I am, like, walking let's say I'm at the mall, right? When I'm walking through the mall, I'm not walking through the mall with a smile on my face, unless whatever I'm thinking about makes me smile. I'm walking through the mall extremely pensive,
Okay.
which might make me look unapproachable because I'm on a mission to do whatever I came to the mall to do. I'm not one of those women who just wants to shop for hours on end. And it is not often my happy place to be at the mall, right? And so I think sometimes people look at me and they're like, "Oh, she's stuck up. She's bougie. She is." And I am bougie, just so we're clear. Like I do have a level of standard that I like to live and operate on. But I am the warmest, most giving person you will ever meet. I am literally abundance personified. And what that means is that I am not stingy, I am not selfish, and I don't withhold in order to get you to pay me. Like, I remember when I first came into the coaching and consulting space and hired my very first coach, she was great if you knew what questions to ask her. But if you were waiting for her to volunteer any amount of information or strategy that would take you to the next level, it was not going to happen. She was very stingy. And I think because she grew up in the, they got to pay, like they got to pay for that, right? And it was like the container includes these things. And if it was outside of the container, you had to pay more money to get it. That's not who I am. Like, I want to see everyone win, and I'm abundant. So I can give out of my overflow and still have overflow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so because of that, that's the way I show up. And so looking at me, you might not get that right away. You've got to experience me in order to see that's who I am. So I think that's the thing that's the most misunderstood.
Yeah, and what you're speaking to is like this idea of this abundance that exists in the world, and there's enough to give around. It's like not having that scarcity mindset and not feeling like, oh, I'm giving away my secret sauce, or I'm letting people like in and getting stuff for free. And it's, if you feel like there's enough abundance and money is unlimited and wealth is unlimited, then you can never give too much.
Absolutely, right, and if I give you my secret sauce, I just go make some more, like, what are we talking about? Yeah, and it took me a while to get to that point, but
Yeah,
that's who I am today. I'm literally abundance, and so because that's the energy I show up, that's why people enjoy my energy, and you said, "I love your energy," because I'm abundance.
yeah, yeah,
Who doesn't wanna spend time with abundance?
yeah.
So
Of
it's like,
course.
let's hang out. That's why we
Yeah,
could talk for another
absolutely.
hour if we
Yeah.
wanted to.
One of the
Yeah,
ways I heard a coach describe it to me is you give them the what and the why for free. What they pay you for is the how.
yeah.
Yeah. What is something you've changed your mind about recently?
I'm hosting a live event at the time of this recording in about a few weeks, and we had the offers all laid out. And then I changed my mind. I was like, nope, not doing that. We're going to do this instead. I changed my mind a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Colby, but I'm a 9 quick start. So I'm big picture visionary energy. And I changed my mind like I changed my underwear. Like, I literally make a different decision and I'm completely okay with it.
Yeah.
It does, ruffle the feathers of my team sometimes because they're all high fact finders, right? They're the people that go and get it done. And so I know I drive them crazy because I'm like, well, you know what? We're not doing that anymore. I know I just had you build that whole thing out, but we're on to the next thing
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, it's important to find team members who can work in that environment and someone's like set the stage for like, I heard a boss describe it once as be comfortable with ambiguity because
Yeah.
sometimes, it's not all, especially in the world of entrepreneurship, like things need to change on the dime, and they're big decisions. And sometimes you'll just get a download that's like, you know what, I think we need to just kind of do something different. And I think if they trust in you and your vision as a leader and they've seen what you're able to produce up until this point, when you make those decisions, I feel like they can come to like an agreement that that's the right thing to do. Even if they're fighting it
Absolutely.
in the beginning, like their initial reaction, but I think they understand like, okay, they trust your vision and they know that if you are doing this, it's for a good reason.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens.
Well, Darnyelle, thank you so much for this time, being gracious with your time, sharing your incredibly inspiring story. I just love kind of like painting the picture of like your origin story and early days because, we all think back about like the success we've had. And sometimes it's hard for us to look back and see how we got to where we are now. And it can easily see by virtue of you sharing your incredibly inspiring story of like who you were as a child, literally like transformed you into this powerful woman that you are now. And all those experiences, you wouldn't be who you are without everything that you just kind of walked us through. And so it's truly inspiring and a reminder for people to take ownership of their own life because I think too many times people are like waiting for someone to come save you. And it's like no one sometimes that
You got to save yourself. Nobody's coming.
no one's coming to save you. And
You are
sometimes,
it.
yeah. And sometimes that's enough for me to write in my journal, like, no one's coming to save me. Like, no one's going to solve this problem for me as an
Right.
entrepreneur
I
or
got to
something.
solve it.
I got to solve it. So,
I got to make the tough decision.
yeah.
I got to decide, right? And I think it's important, like, because once you decide, then God can bend the universe, but you got to decide, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I said earlier, like, you're waiting on God. No, God is waiting on you. Like, take action, like, pray, have conversation with Him, but don't, no, take the next step you know to take. The path
Yes.
emerges as you walk it, right? That's that
Yes.
Rumi quote. Like, we have to do that. And so, thank you for helping me to unpack the story in a way that others haven't helped me
Yeah.
to unpack it. And so, it's been really, 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 really pleasurable sharing
Yeah.
with you and just even listening as you've asked me the questions to my response. So I look forward to when the episode comes live and watching it again and
Yeah.
just really being able to take it all in because I'm not participating in it at that particular point in time. I can be a
Yeah.
student of what
Yes.
we got to talk about today. So this is great.
So you could be like, oh, I said that. Wow.
Yeah.
We'll get all that. We have all the information from the everything submitted, incredible1enterprises.com, the Move to Millions podcast. We'll make sure everything's in the show notes so people don't have to like feel like they need to jot anything down. We'll make sure everything's available for them. Is there
Perfect.
anywhere else you wanted to send people, our listeners or viewers to?
We usually give movetomillions.com because
Okay,
it's a digest page and
perfect.
they go there and then that'll take them to everywhere else.
Okay. Thanks again for being so generous with your time and wisdom.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I
Okay.
appreciate it.